Hey everybody, this is Trish, and I'm gonna walk you through building this page. It was for the party game of day number 5 at Sweet Shoppe, which was a recipe challenge. Which, to start out, you need just one background paper and a black and white photo. I don't like black and white photos, but here we are. The next part was to use messy paint as much as you like, and that's what I'm working on at this point for the next several minutes. Is the messy paint. It definitely took me longer than this. This is very sped up. Um, so what you can see is that I'm using the paint, and not only am I using the different paints, I'm duplicating them because another part of the recipe is to have two clusters, and I am making a cluster at the top of the page and at the bottom of the page, and they're going to sort of work their way towards the middle. Um, Laying down paint is either usually the first thing or the last thing that I do in a page, depending on if the page is going to be more of a messy painterly feel or just a traditional feel. If it's more traditional, then I usually do the paint last. Uh, I love those paints that I just used right there because they also have sort of like a layer of texture to them in torn paper, which feels nice. Um, you can see sometimes I add things and then I delete them, and I really like to use the transform tools on everything. Uh, but yes, and so like here I'm starting to layer in the flat objects on one on either side of the photo, and I didn't point it out before, but there's like these rectangles of white that are also at the top and bottom that are also sort of used to draw your eye towards where the clusters are going to be. That first piece of lace, you're going to see that I actually end up not using it because I realized that I was starting to sort of build up the middle like another cluster, and I really didn't want to do that. I know it looks like it because there's a lot of paint there, but I sort of want to make it so that the bottom and top are just going to sort of meet in the middle, but it's not its own separate cluster. Um, I'm using the arrows again to sort of direct towards the photo. I'm using the clusters to sort of point to them. Like I said, they're meeting in the middle. But yeah, now I'm laying down the flat aspects of the page, which is generally in like a regular traditional style page. It's going to be the first thing that I do. Um, because if you were making an actual paper scrapbook page, then you don't usually start with the bulky things. You're going to start with the flatter objects. Um, so, yes, that's what I'm doing here. You can see that I make a lot of changes as I go. As I start building things up, I realize something else doesn't quite work where it was and it needs to be moved. Um, let's see. I love that little just string right there. I don't know why. I love those strings all the time. Another part of the recipe was to use just one alphabet letter, and so I used the letter U, which is the alpha for one of the kids, because I used two kids together. The hearts makes up the other part of the title, which is just heartU. Um, and then you have to use a fastener or stitches, and I used a staple right here to sort of attach the hearts together into the photo. At the time, I thought that, that was just where I was going to leave it with the fasteners, but I ended up bringing stitches in as an afterthought because I thought that, I needed more. I don't generally finish a page without stitches, and that's probably where my brain went. I'm laying down a little bit more bulkier elements here. The bugs were so cute, and my son desperately wanted the bugs added, so I added them. And then another part of the recipe was to use scatters, and so both of the kits that I used on this page have scatters, and their inclusion of paint and scatters are actually why I picked them. Um, as you can see, I put one scatter towards the top and one towards the bottom, again, pointing back towards the middle. That's generally how I work with my page, is I try to make the clusters and everything sort of point towards where I want your eye to look. Here are the stitches that I ended up adding, and the word strips, which were also a part of the recipe. I completely forgot they were a part of the recipe, and so they were an afterthought added on there. I mean, which is weird because usually I use a lot of word strips, but I didn't on this page. So then I had to figure out where to add them in. And then once I added them, I was like, yeah, I definitely want to put the stitches in, sort of anchor them down and make them go together. Let's see. And I think, yeah, at this point, I work on tweaking my shadows some, which I know, probably not obvious to you once the page is done and you're just looking at it in the gallery, but it's obvious to me. And um, I developed my style a lot over the years by studying paper pages and looking at certain elements on them and seeing how they interact with the different things on the page and what sort of gives it that feeling of depth. And shadows is a lot of it. So again, while it might not be noticeable to you that I'm tweaking all these shadows, it is to me. And we're adding the date, because the date is the last aspect of the recipe, is to make sure you add it. And so I added the month and year. And that's it. That is the completed page. I hope you like it.